Hi BookTube and happy Tuesday. I woke up this morning thinking it was Wednesday, even though I'm doing these daily videos, but no, it's Tuesday. And I wanted to do a tag video for Tuesday, but I'm going to save that and do maybe a couple of tags later this week because I really wanted to sit down and share with you how my months plural, because I didn't cover March. So I'm doing March and April wrap up all in one because I had stopped making videos sometime in March because I was having a time, as I've alluded to a couple of times here and there, like work stress and work volume. Everything was just ramping up so much that I didn't have the time or the energy to film much, and yeah, of anything. So I wanted to talk about what I've read, and starting out with March, I participated in a couple events. I have my handy dandy notebook here. I participated in March of the Mammoths, Middle Grade March, and March Mystery Madness. I don't even know how many years I've participated in each of these. I know for sure March of the Mammoths, I've been participating ever since it was invented way back when. And March Mystery Madness, I think as well. Like maybe not the very first year, maybe, but the rest of the years I have. But I read 2 books for the Mammoth readathon, 4 middle grade March books, and 6 March Mystery Madness books. And I read 18 books total. 10 of the books that I owned for my shelf, so yay for that. And then 8 were digital, so they were either ebooks or audiobooks. I didn't break that down. I don't think I listened to any audiobooks this. I think they're all ebooks. 2 of them were nonfiction, and 16 of them were fiction. And then so I have been using, what is this called? Storygraph. I've been tracking on Goodreads and then like sitting down and like marking it all in Storygraph because I thought I would give it a trial for a couple months, but I guess I feel like I should just keep doing it because it's interesting. It gives you these charts as like a little wrap up that I like. I like the little diagrams. So it shows I've read 6,751 pages for the month of March. I'm going to show this to you. And it's the first little pictures are the first book, the middle book, and then the last book that I read. So I started out with rereading Joanne Faluke's Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder. This is the first book in the Hannah Swenson series, and it's set in like northern Minnesota, small town, and she's always complaining about the weather, so I wanted to kick it off with a mystery. And then the middle book I read was The Man in the Dark by Susan Scarlett, and that is the pen name for Noel Stratfield, the one that wrote the Ballet Shoes series. But before that, she was writing these World War II era British history kind of women's fiction. And so this is about a young woman who gets a job working at a house taking care of a niece of a man who recently went blind, and so she of course forms a relationship with him and goes forward from there. And then the last book I read was a Bailey Cates book 2 or 3, I feel like, in the Magical Bakery series, Charms and Chocolate Chips. And that was also a reread for me. And then it breaks down like my fiction versus nonfiction, and then these like themes that I don't really pay attention to. I would never mark my books in Storygraph of what theme they are. So there's mystery, historical, children's, and there's also like a whole thing of like slow paced and fast paced. And I haven't really delved into the Storygraph minutia, but let me know if you haven't, what I should be paying attention to or tracking there. But there's that. And then it's going to what is this? How many pages I read a day? I don't track that myself, so I don't know how it's doing it. Like if it's just basing on when I finish a book, because I know like in Goodreads you can track how many pages you read a day, but I just can't be bothered to, if I had to do that every single day, it takes away my reading time. So I think this is just showing books I've finished that each day. So you can see at the end of the month I was wrapping up quite a few books, and I bet this is me wrapping up the Mammoth books. And then this is print, digital, audio. Yeah, I don't know how it's tracking that either because I haven't recorded it. I just been like selecting the book. Maybe I have for audio. Never mind. Yeah, so for audio, it looks like I read 1 book. But the print and the digital, I haven't been marking that on the Storygraph. I just been using whatever edition comes up first on the pages. And then the other chart it gives you is all the books you've read throughout the entire month. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Let's see here. I was reading the Heather Graham book for the first time, although she's been on my reader for quite a bit, Phantom Evil, because Sarah over at Category Romance was doing a book pick for that, and I didn't really care for it that much. It was not my cup of tea. I read Don Winslow, Broken. That was a short story collection. I really liked, although he was saying how in the introduction he can't write short stories, so he can't even like consider that. They're basically little mini novels. But he wrote, what is it, City on Fire? I really like that series, although it's not my normal genre at all. It's like mafia, think like Sopranos and Godfather, things like that. I can barely even watch those movies and TV shows, but I know they're popular. And then I read another book in the Rose years, like the Generational Saga books, by the Little House series, and this is by Roger Lee McBride, and this I think is like book 3 or 4 in the series. This one was weird for me because I don't mean to go through all these books because we'll be here forever if I do. Okay, so I'm doing March and April, but this one was weird because the relationship between Rose and not Rose, Laura and Almanzo was portrayed in a weird way, because it had this like innuendo in there a bit, which was like inappropriate and awkward and just completely, I feel like, out of the blue for a children's book. It wasn't like explicit or anything like that, but it had these awkward moments. I also read a Miss Julia book. This is Miss Julia's Marvelous Makeover by Anne B. Ross. I love the series. And then I was reading a couple middle grade books. And yeah, this one, Deep Dish by Mary Kay Andrews. I really like her novels, except this one. This one was like, you would think, oh, there's cooking involved, and it's like this like rom-com, like Mary Kay Andrews is good for like rom-coms and mysteries. They're longer books. Her books are typically longer, but still like give you lots of character development, and they're often humorous. But this was not the book for me. It was like, I would not recommend if you want to start with Mary Kay Andrews, read almost anything else. And maybe some of these is because my mood was just off because I was having such a hard time in March and part of April. So like some of these other books, like Scarlet, and my Mammoths was Scarlet, the sequel to Gone with the Wind, and Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. And Scarlet, that I didn't realize until I was reading the book that it was authorized by the Gone with the Wind estate to create that sequel. So I was all in, but when I was reading it, it kept saying things, like Scarlett's famous line is like, tomorrow's a new day, like things are hard now, but they'll be better in the future. I'm just gonna push it aside and keep going with my life, no matter what, that whole like resilience thing. But in this book, it felt a bit stilted and very repetitive with it constantly every single chapter saying that, and I was just, oh my gosh, here it is again. Like I could bank that it was going to happen on each chapter. Yeah, and Wind and Truth was just a slog to get through, completely overwritten, and it could have been half the length and been just fine. And then I read Seventh Son by Orson Scott Card because I saw it mention, I can't remember the channel name, like Samwise, I think is his channel name. He was doing a series of videos on that series. So I was like, oh, why not give that a go? And it was just okay for me. And then I read these. I like I said, I finished with the Bailey Cates book, and then I read Elmore Leonard book Swag, and that one was another one. It was just okay. Like it was following these characters that decided to do crime on a whim, in a way. I was like, oh, I can figure this out. I can make the system work for me so that I can earn money, and like with very little work involved. So it's like humorous from there, but it just was not the right tone for me at all. Okay, so moving to April. Okay, 9 minutes and 9.5 minutes. Okay, well, it wasn't too bad for covering all of March. We're not going to go through every single book in April, I don't think, because I read 30 books, mainly because I was participating in Picture This, a new to me reading event where you're focusing on children's picture books. So for April, I participated in Picture This, where I read 15 children's picture books. I was hoping for a book a day. Obviously, that didn't happen, but 15 is not bad. Old School April, where you're reading like throwback book or nostalgic books, things like that. And so I read 8 books for that. And then National Poetry Month, I kind of sort of read 2 books because instead of reading like a collection of poetry, which would be, you know, normal and expected, I guess, but instead I read 2 biographies. I read 1 biography and one that was like focused on gardening that included lots of poetry by Emily Dickinson. So yeah, so both of them included a bunch of poems from each of. So I read Robert Frost's biography and I read the gardening focused book for Emily Dickinson. So it includes lots of poems throughout the book. So like that's why I'm counting it for that event. Okay, so I read 30 books total. 6 of them were nonfiction and 24 books were fiction. 12 of the books were from my shelves and 18 books were digital. Okay, so then let's go through this little chart thing here. So April, it was 30 books and I read 4,888 pages. So even though I read 30 books compared to, what was it, last month? Wow, yeah, I was reading much. I read like 2,000 more pages. And the month of March, this is for sure the children's books taking over. In fact, if you look at the first, middle, and last book that I was reading, 2 of them were Beatrix Potter. I haven't reread these since I was a little kid, so it was lots of fun to go through these. So the first book I read was The Tale of Peter Rabbit, then The Tale of Mr. Todd, and then the last book was a complete dud. I mentioned this, I feel like, recently because I was creating my pile of books for May, for Horror Mayhem, and I was like, oh, I want to jump in right now, and it was a quick, I don't know, 150-page book, but it was awful. This is Prom Night by Jessie Osborne, and I cannot recommend. And so yeah, so that's the pie chart for the fiction versus nonfiction. And then yeah, like the themes or whatever the genres. Because yeah, this is showing genres, but when in the app, there's another chart where you get like moods and things was listed. That's the one I'm questioning, like, what is that? Do I need to be doing something with that? So yeah, the main one is children's, and then there's classics, young adult, middle grade, and poetry are listed there. And then here's the pages a day. Again, not accurate because I haven't been tracking pages, but you can see spikes of when I randomly am finishing a bunch of books. And then yeah, the print and audio. I think again, audio, I was reading like 1 book and all the rest are digital or physical books. Okay, and then showing all the books I read, starting with Peter Rabbit. Yeah, you can see lots of picture books. All the picture books were fantastic. Not a single one was a dud. So we have Beatrix Potter and Owl Moon. And then, well, this one was kind of a dud. This one was Terror Valley. It was just okay. Dandy was fantastic. I think Steve Donahue did a whole video on Dandy. And so I read it, and it's about a lion family where it's like a suburban family, and the little girl really is like really charmed by a dandelion that's in the yard, and she's like, oh, my pretty flower friend, and the dad is like, oh no, this is a weed in my yard. And so he's like, I have to take this thing out. It can't stay here because my whole yard will be covered in dandelions once those seeds spread. So he keeps trying to like sneak up and cut down this flower, but the daughter keeps visiting it when he goes to do that. And then the neighbors around him are like, have you done it yet? Have you chopped down this flower? So it was just such a cute children's book. And I read Make Way for Ducklings and Spring on an Arctic Island. This was fun to read. I like, this is by Catherine Sherman. I don't know how easy this is to find, but I like reading like these like theme-based books in the different seasons and places I'll never visit. And then I read another of the Rose Years on the Other Side of the Hill. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it was this. I think this is the one. It was the most recent one I read, not the Apple book from March, but this is the one that was like really awkward between Laura and Almanza, and then what Rose was picking up, and it was just weird. Welcome to Junior High, the Girl Talk book number 1. The cover was way better than the book. There was not much character development or anything in the story, but I couldn't pass up seeing that cover. So 80s. Um, let's see. And then, yeah, there's Emily Dickinson. What is this called? Emily Dickinson's Gardening Life by Marta McDowell. I've heard this author before. I've read at least one of her books. She also did a Beatrix Potter book, now that I'm thinking about it. But I read this one. This has been on my radar since last spring. Because I've always liked the idea of gardening, but never done it myself. Never had like a proper yard to do that. I reread Larry McMurtry's Moving On. This maybe because it was, again, my mindset, I don't know, but it was depressive in a way, because it's following a young married couple, and the husband is really trying to figure out his life and kind of dragging the wife around with him in his trials and trials of things, and she puts up with him, but they have a very contentious relationship where they're constantly bickering and kind of like tugging at each other, going opposite ways, and yeah, you can see how that would end up. Then I read Heidi, a graphic novel. I can't read who the adaptation was written by, but this is kind of sort of a book for Picture This, although it was a much more wordy picture book, but maybe it still counts. And then The Tale of Benjamin Button. Okay. Oh yeah, I reread Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. That was an audiobook for sure with this one, and it's been a while since I read her, and so Annie Dillard is I really I have to be in the mood for her because she's very like philosophical in her nature writing, but I did enjoy it. Then I read Nowhere to Run, Sweet Valley book. One of those, like, this one wasn't so fun because it's about will Emily lose everything she loves? And so the theme was kind of dark, and not dark because I mean, yeah, it was darker for Sweet Valley. Those books tend to be more soap opera-ish and light, but this one was dark, and again, not helping my mood at all. So then I moved on to Broccoli Tapes. This one too was sad because despite the title, there was lots of death involved. It was about a young girl who moved to Hawaii and starting a new school and getting used to a new location, and she befriends a cat, like the only friend that she has, and it's an outdoor cat, and she can't take it inside. And yeah, it was very depressing. Yeah, then I read the two Beatrix Potter books, The Tale of Mr. Tot and The Tale of the Flopsy Bunnies. And I read an R.L. Stine book. So yeah, for Old School April, The Wrong Number. And then I read a biography, but a picture book of it for Beatrix Potter, Scientist by Lindsay H. Metcalf. Which was fun. I didn't know much about her life and how she was really getting into studying like the botany of things and studying like mushrooms and things. And then she moved to her famous Peter Cottontail stories. And I read Twilight Chant, a picture book, and Waltzing Matilda. Waltzing Matilda I found at a little free library, and it was about I guess like a well-known folktale or song that's in Australia. I knew nothing about that. And yeah, I read a Fanny Flagg. I needed that. At this point in the month, I was like, I needed something light and humorous, and I laughed so much in this book. This is Daisy Faye and the Miracle Man. I wanted something to laugh at, and Fanny Flagg, I haven't read her in a good long while. I've reread one of her Christmas books fairly recently, but nothing else. I read her years and years and years ago, but I remember enjoying her books and finding them funny. This is one of the first books, or yeah, it's the first book she wrote, and then the title got changed. But it is very autobiographical for her life, and it's following Daisy Faye, who is in Mississippi. Yeah, Mississippi. Yeah, the Fanny Flagg is from Alabama, but this one's taking place in Mississippi. And the family, even though it's this one again can be kind of sad because it's following like a alcoholic dad, and they're struggling with money and getting into all these different get rich quick kind of schemes, just trying to sustain themselves. And so that part was a bit hard to read, but just Daisy Faye's outlook on things and her commentary is hilarious, and it follows her from when she's like eight years old or so through her going through school and getting out on her own. So that was a really nice read. And then the Robert Frost biography I read was Love and Need, The Life of Robert Frost Poetry by Adam Plunkett. It was too much deep dive and into the nitty gritty of each of the poems. And like, this is of course Adam's interpretation of the poems, and it's like line by line, word by word analysis. That I didn't go into this book for that. Like, yes, I expected some of that, but I was more interested in reading, like dabbling in the poetry and the biography part, but it just got too in the weeds for me to fully enjoy this biography. And then I read a couple more children's books. Hedgehog Needs a Hug. He's going to all these different animals looking for some comfort, and some of them are too prickly or too stinky or too big or small, things like that. One Morning in Maine by Robert McCloskey. The drawing in this one was fantastic for the picture book. Casey at the Bat, and then then Canada, which was a children's picture book, history of Canada. And I didn't learn much in that. It was just like going over the provinces and what's with the different climates in those different areas. So it was just okay. But again, quick children's picture book, and then I ended with Prom Night, which was a dud. So that is all that now that I'm finally caught up, I can now get on to talking about like the May books as I read them each week. So I don't feel like I'm so far behind with things. But yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, BookTube.